Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And it's time for another daily dose of dismal Disney. We're going to talk about this new article on Bloomberg, basically backing up the New York Times and before them CNBC, saying that, yeah, the Bob Iger situation is out of control and the Disney board should not have let him have as much power as he had.
Shouldn't have given him how many extensions either.
And yeah, it's not looking too good. I think there's something going on behind the scenes. I think there are people at Disney, or at least people that are invested in Disney or board members, that want to make sure he actually leaves this time.
Well, I remember when he came back in November 2022 and people were like saying, is he going to leave this time? 2 years?
Yeah.
That's not enough time, is it really? I bet he doesn't leave. You got to get an extension. And look, there he got an extension. But this time he swears he's in it to find a successor.
Yeah, Pinky swears.
Yeah, this time.
So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you get woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
You can go out and watch that other video we did covering the New York Times article. They're actually bringing up the CNBC article from last year, which the New York Times echoed a lot of that. They added some stuff.
They talked to people and they said it was their stories were confirmed by multiple sources before they posted it.
Yeah, and now we've got Bloomberg basically saying, like, yeah, this is a freaking joke. And the board is pissed off. Yeah, they said dueling in-depth features from the New York Times and CNBC published in the last week. That's not in the last week. The CNBC one was from last year. Tell the inside story of how Bob Iger returned to the helm of Disney by ousting his handpicked successor, Bob Chapek. No one emerges looking very good. Iger comes across as an egomaniac who can't let go, and Chapek reads as inept, and both seem downright petty.
I would argue that one seems far more petty than the other because Chapek could have sued, didn't do it. You haven't heard anything out of Chapek. I'm sure part of it is like a non-disparagement clause. You know, he probably has signed NDAs and crap. Maybe when that's up, you'll hear more. I know he's doing other things, but you're not hearing anything out of him. You know, he's not the one out there making comments.
Yeah, actually, Chapek in that New York Times article, again, you can go out and watch the video. It was like an hour long, hour and 15 minutes, I guess, that we did. It dropped over the weekend. And he comes across as a petulant, whiny bitch.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when he was out, and he was out as chairman of the board, too, you would think he would have non-disparagement and different things, but he was out there making comments right and left about this and that and the other and getting digs in here and there. He was allowed to say stuff.
So they're saying, yeah, Disney's succession plan failed miserably. And actually, as this article goes on, it's not very long. We'll go through it. They basically said, look, this is incredibly important, that Disney is incredibly important. It's an important American company, and it's just it's inconceivable that things went as badly as they did. But a lot of it, 95% of it's because Bob Iger can't let go. It said, yeah, they didn't just pick the wrong guy in Chapek. They allowed Iger to run the entire process and do it in a way that made his successor's implosion inevitable.
Right. Like, I think they thought, Chapek, I never thought Chapek was a good idea because he was called Bob Paycheck, Bob Cheapskate, whatever, for a reason. Chapek. There were reasons why people didn't like Bob Chapek. That being said, Bob Iger seriously did everything he could in his power. Basically thought he was going to be a puppet. He was called him boss. He was going to be controllable. He was still going to get to run the company. And when Chapek was deciding he wanted to turn to actually try, Iger didn't like that. And so every time Chapek tried to study the numbers, he got cornered. When he tried to do anything, Iger was there, trying to sabotage him. Like, for example, we talked about yesterday, or whatever we did the other video, about how Chapek kept running by his restructuring past Iger several times. Iger basically let him think that it was a good idea and then went behind his back. And then when he asked him point blank, I think it's a bad idea. But he could have told him that and saved how many months of trouble. Yeah. But he didn't. But Chapek still did it anyway, which, he's guilty too. I'm just saying, if you have someone undermining you the whole time, it's going to make you look even more inept. How would he have done if he had the support he was supposed to get? You know what I'm saying? You have to always wonder that, even though I don't think he was the right choice to begin with.
No, I think Bob Chapek, I think he's a good middle manager.
He wasn't given a fair shot either.
Yeah, I don't think I can't even really say that. I mean, Parks fans don't like him. I think he would be a good CEO or middle manager at a company that wasn't Disney, that wasn't as creative as Disney is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way, because he doesn't make creative decisions. They said the chaos and infighting that ensued hurt the company. Oh my God, can we admit that Disney's in a bad state right now?
You're not going to get the pixie dusters yelling and screaming and screeching.
We've got, now this is the third mainstream media outlet in the last couple of days that's put a hit piece out on Bob Iger and said, he basically is the biggest problem at Disney right now. Leading to poor decision making that damaged the business and morale. A CEO is supposed to report to the board, but at Disney, the directors seem to work for Iger.
Yeah, because he keeps picking his friends, which I've mentioned before.
Yeah, they just rubber stamped his selection of Chapek because he knew Chapek was going to be a pushover.
Well, one of the reasons they were fighting against, Peltz was because, besides the fact they just don't like Peltz, and they were mad about Perlmutter, but that's again tied to Bob Iger.
Right.
Was because they're all Iger's friends. He controls them. They don't want Peltz on the board because he's an uncontrollable element. That's why they didn't want that.
Yeah, and I think having Peltz and Rizzullo in there to have some oversight would have been good. I mean, Peltz we could debate about, but Rizzullo for sure. The guy was next in line to be the CEO of Disney, but of course Iger tanked him. I think Iger is insecure. I think Iger has imposter syndrome. This is my armchair psychology. I think he's got imposter syndrome.
I don't think he has imposter syndrome. I think he's an egomaniac. They're complete opposites.
Because the thing is, he's just a weatherman. He's not creative. He didn't work his way through the ranks as a creative.
I don't think it's imposter syndrome because he legitimately thinks that he is better than Walt Disney. I really believe that. And that's not imposter syndrome. Yeah, he thinks he's a founder. And look, the reason the other people didn't get picked for CEO, likely why Staggs didn't and Mayer didn't and Rizzullo didn't, was because Bob Iger wasn't going to be able to run the company that he thought through them. They weren't going to be as complacent in his mind to let him run everything. But he thought, because Chapek called him boss, that, me and Chapek have a good relationship. I'll be able to use him as a puppet. Let me grease my hand up. Bend over, Bob. Little Bob. Here comes Big Bob.
Yeah, and he said that, Iger required Chapek as CEO report to him rather than the board. Mm-hmm. So he's basically a glorified personal assistant at that point, right? But the night before the CEO handoff was set to be announced, the general counsel said that the bylaws required the CEO report to the board.
Because most CEOs have to report to the board.
Iger wasn't willing to budge, so it was decided that Chapek would report to both Iger and the board. Shareholders need to revolt because they basically stepped over the rules, the bylaws.
Well, no, they changed it to accommodate the bylaws, but they still gave Iger his own way.
Yeah, but this needed to be something that I believe shareholders probably needed to have a say in. Like, can we have the new CEO of the company, the guy who's going to determine whether or not your stock has any value, are we going to allow him to report to his former boss?
Spoiler alert, it has a lot less value now.
It has a lot less value, yeah. And aside of how much Iger was driving the process, he demanded the company not delay the announcement despite the last-minute change, even though the board had not even discussed the new arrangement as a group or even approved it. Well, some directors were unhappy with the arrangement, as it had, in so many instances, the board went along with what Iger wanted. Yeah, he runs Disney like it's his personal company that he started. Right,
so the takeaway from this is he controls the CEO position, even when he's not CEO, and he controls the board.
Yes. What's so wild about this is if you look into the history of the Walt Disney Company, even though it's called the Walt Disney Company, Walt could not unilaterally decide everything. And that's probably a good thing, because if Walt unilaterally decided everything, the company would have gone bankrupt. Well, he did go bankrupt before, but it would have.
Well, I mean, when there was a board in place, he would have, that's one of the reasons the board was put there.
Yeah.
So that Walt couldn't go his own way.
Bad shit. And his brother Roy was the one who actually, Walt would tell Roy what he wanted to do, and then Roy would find a way to make it work financially.
I sincerely think that even though it's called the Walt Disney Company, it was just as much a Roy Disney Company as it was Walt Disney. There wouldn't be a Walt Disney Company if Roy Disney hadn't been there.
Yeah,
because Walt would have gone bankrupt 10 times over.
Oh yeah, it used to be the Disney Brothers Studios.
Well, it made more sense to be Disney Brothers, but it's the Disney Brother World doesn't sound so good.
Oh God, it sounds like a cult.
Disney Brothers Land.
Let's get a Brothers Land.
Doesn't roll off the tongue as well.
It does not. They said, wow, this is crazy. He said, he put his own people on the board.
Which I knew, because I knew that executives, Mark Parker, who was, in there for different things, he was one of his really good friends. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said he's friends with Mary Barra, too.
Yep. The resulting portrait is one of colossal ineptitude at one of America's most valuable and iconic companies, and the riveting corporate intrigue has big implications for the future of Disney as it tries to get succession right the second time around. Bob Iger should have stayed down.
But did you see the sentence above that? One of the other executives' wives, board members' wives, was his wife's friend from college.
Oh.
And it said he wasn't used to hearing no from them, and he was taken aback a few times when the board chastiser stood up to him. Because, yeah, he was shocked when, like, Chapek called him out for his shenanigans. No one's ever disrespected me like that. He was shocked when, Susan Arnold told him to wait outside, while they were talking to Chapek about stuff because it was, he wasn't part of that meeting.
You're not the boss anymore, right? You're not supposed to be the boss.
Well, he is again because,
You didn't see Michael Eisner hanging around when Iger took over. You know what I'm saying?
You didn't see him bad-mouthing Disney or Iger either.
No. And again, this is like there's definitely some dysfunction with Bob Iger where he really truly believes in his heart of hearts that he is the Senate.
That's why I'm saying it's not imposter syndrome. It's hubris. It's that his ego is just that big.
It said it's clear the company has learned at least some lessons. The board now has a committee dedicated to CEO succession. Good luck with that. However, cynics have a case in questioning whether Iger has only consolidated his power further. Many executives and board members who have departed are the ones who stood up to Iger.
Yes.
And Parker, who's in charge of this, I guess, is one of his allies.
It is. Mark Parker is one of his friends. We talked about that in the other article. And Susan Arnold made sure she left and everything else, and a bunch of people left. The ones that would give it back suddenly are gone. And then they did not want Peltz or Rizzullo on the board because they would challenge Iger. Plus, he's pissed at Perlmutter,
Yeah, but it's like the problems are... I mean, this is the thing. Like, regardless of whether or not you like Nelson Peltz, it is very clear that at this point, Bob Iger is not good for the company. He did his thing. He racked up a bunch of debt and he bought a bunch of shit, and then they ran it into the ground because they're spinning too many plates. But he needs to go. He needs to go sooner rather than later. And they need to find, and I guarantee you there's some people at the company that have been at the company for a long time that could run it better than him. But they need to remember that they are in charge of the Walt Disney Company, okay? That they did not found the company. He's not the founder.
It's not the Bob Iger company. And Bob Iger, for his brilliance, supposedly, went and invested a shit ton of his own money into Funko.
Yeah.
And other things. Some other things he did well. He was like all into the metaverse, and he was all into, I think, like NFTs and stuff for a while there too. So he invested in a lot of like, hey there fellow kids dumb shit.
Yeah.
So it's not always the best choice. But before you get to that part you're going to read, if you read the part above it, they said, boards want to keep successful CEOs around during leadership handoffs and to retain and pass on institutional knowledge. So you want the CEOs to train their replacement. But that shouldn't mean allowing the outgoing executive to run the succession process or continue to control the company after relinquishing the title. And that's what happened. I think he picked Chapek because he thought he could control Chapek.
Like, I'm leaving, honest I am. I'm out the door. Bye-bye.
And like Staggs and Mayer are back, but they're back as equals, as consultants that he hired to help him. But they're on the equal footing because they both are CEOs themselves.
Yeah, and they're not really a threat, are they? Because they have their own company.
No, but I'd come back too because I'd be like, hey there, Bob,
Yeah.
You want my help now, don't you, Bob?
Like I said in the other video, the only way they're actually going to get rid of Bob Iger is if a piano falls on his head, because this guy is not going to go willingly. He's going to look for every loophole,
Well, he's claiming now he's going to go willingly, but he made sure he got himself a 2-year extension. And we even said there's no way. We're like, he's gonna make sure he hangs on, and he did. Yeah. 2 years. I'm gonna be here 2 years. No, made him sorry he got there 4. He was supposed to leave He promised to leave after 10 years, and then he ended up getting how many years by the time it was all said and done? When did he take over? So you got Iger in there at 2005?
Yeah, it's been a long time,
2006, somewhere in there. Anyway, he was supposed to stay for 10 years, which would have put him in his first time he was going to be up for renewal in 2016 or something, and then he kept getting extensions. Then it was 2019, and then it was 20 whatever, and it kept going on and on and on.
And almost 10 years later.
Yeah, here we are again.
Here we are again.
That he's still there. So by the time it's all said and done, if he's going to have like almost 20 years that he was running it.
Yeah.
Other than that like little stint that Chapek had, so maybe like 17 or whatever, 18. But he was supposed to stay for 10.
But he's worried, according to that New York Times article, he's worried he's not going to be able to get the good restaurant reservations.
Oh no, he found out that after he left the first time that he still got the good restaurants reservations, and people still talked to him and called him, and he could still talk to the important people, because that's what he was worried about.
His image,
he was worried about not getting the good tables at the restaurants and people not kissing his ass. He was worried people wouldn't kiss his ass. That's at the end of the day what it was about.
I mean, well, we have Steve Jobs, who he looks up to greatly, and he thinks this is the thing. This is the thing in his mind. I mean, this guy thinks he's Steve Jobs. I'm like, you are a weatherman who got lucky, right? And you schemed and manipulated to get to where you're at. Steve Jobs actually created stuff. Well, we could argue whether he created himself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's up for debate.
But he was actually the founder of Apple, right? He actually started Apple. You took over Disney, and he's telling you should quit now and enjoy life while you still have it, while you have your health. I'm sure it put things in perspective for him to have cancer. But like Steve Jobs, as much of a control freak as he was, I think Iger is 1,000 times worse.
I don't know. He just can't let go.
He just doesn't get it. I mean,
he thought he was going to come back to conquering hero. And at first people were like cheering. And I remember telling you guys, like, Iger's the one who made a lot of decisions that put the company where it was. Chapek was the figurehead at the time some of these were implemented. But a lot of the greenlit movies and shows and the decisions that were made with Iger. And it wasn't all Chapek's fault. Now, look, again, I know Chapek's Chapek for a reason. I don't disagree with that. But I also know that the other day, he isn't disparaging Disney. He could have sued. They said he had grounds to sue, and he chose not to because his family loves Disney and he didn't want to hurt the company anymore. Iger he had no problem going on interviews and, making digs at Disney, and then he got brought back. I mean, it's like insult to injury.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. We're going to wrap it up?
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.